I was sent this video by a Singh regarding, well, another Singh, a speaker's corner debating with or discussing with the Muslims and the Christians. So one of these videos, they're sort of titled pretty daringly, Sikh's faith is shaken by Muslims' arguments. I hope not. like, if your faith was shaken and you see this video, reach out. I'm sure we can remedy that. But what we're going to do instead for now is go through this video with you guys and sort of see what arguments are put forth. I've only seen like brief amounts of this already, so I guess a lot of it will be like new to me as well as we go through it. But if there's any parts of this in particular you'd like me to react to and stuff, we might not get through it all today, so it might be another part we do, or just see. I might just cut it up for the best sort of parts. But yeah, just let me know if you want to react to any particular part of this. But let's get started and see what how the conversation unfolded.
You probably, so just want to discuss about the Sikh concept, because a lot of people have a lot of misunderstanding about the Sikh religion.
And I think that's the Sikh's fault.
Yeah, and I actually agree with the thing here. It is kind of our fault with this. We don't do enough. Bhai Jugraj Singh was a really good example of someone who did do and put like a lot of work in towards Sikhi Prajan and stuff externally. But I guess a lot of us are guilty of like not doing enough of that. So like even to this thing's point regarding what is the Sikh's fault, it is. I suppose it's our nature a little bit not to be like proselytizing like the Muslim and Christians do generally. But it's nothing against our like Kataram to go out and seek people to enter Sikhi and follow the Guru's path, that sort of thing. I mean, the Gurus themselves were doing this. They were going out and sharing their message, sharing the truth. So there's no reason why we shouldn't do that either.
Yeah, because they don't actually come and
We don't.
They don't
actually convert.
they don't
We
proselytize.
It's not. There's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. We don't come into these spaces, and obviously they're not going to be familiar with it. So it's like we have to enter spaces if we want to become relevant in those spaces. Whether we want to become relevant and enter the space of Speaker's Corner, I'm not too sure. I mean, if there's appetite, maybe we could go down. I mean, I don't mind debating with the Muslims and the Christians there. I mean, I think it'd be quite fun to do that. I'm not sure how fruitful it would be, but we might do. I mean, if you guys want us to go down, we might do. Let us know. But this point that the thing's sort of making about being a bit adverse to conversions, I suppose the reason why this thing does this, and I've seen this happen quite often actually amongst Sikhs, where we're kind of adverse to this concept of converting people, is I guess we have a bad taste in our mouths being subject or targeted for conversion. So sort of like saying, "Oh, Sikhs convert others," it's like a bad word almost now in our community. But we should try and convert others into the path of Sikhi. And it doesn't have to be done in a way where it's very abrasive. It's like, oh, you're wrong, we're right, that kind of thing as well. It can also be a way where if you adopt Sikhi, adopt the Guru's like Gurmat, then it kind of augments your existing faith. It doesn't have to be so abrasive, so life altering in like to begin with. I think one mistakes we Sikhs do is we've really increased the barriers to entry into Sikhi, and then we're surprised why so few are entering it. So, for example, there's a kind of assumption that to become a Sikh, you've got to like adopt Khalsa Maryada, you got to like keep your case and become Shastari, all this kind of stuff. Like, no, that's not the first step. Like, you can come in by simply taking inspiration from the Guru and learning from the Guru. And if you cut your hair, if you don't want to follow whatever ritual, that's fine. But once you want to commit fully to Sikhi and abandon all of the allegiances to it, to other traditions, then that's where the Khalsa comes in. That's what the sovereign order of the Khalsa is. It's a kind of religion within the wider framework of Sikhi. So if Sikhi is the internet, the Khalsa is one website of that internet. And there's other websites, right? Traditionally, we had like Nirmale, Udasi, Sevapantis, various sampradas of these sorts. I mean, even modern day sampradas as well. So there's not just one way to do Sikhi. But the Khalsa is the kind of Guru ordained way. It's the supreme way, I suppose. Like it's the culmination of that 200-year project that the Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj themselves started. So the Khalsa is the aspect of this where all those things come together, and it's given Guru Gaddi as well. So amongst all the other websites, it's probably the Google of websites in this sort of like internet analogy I'm sort of like beating down. So yes, we as Sikhs got to be very clear on the structure of Sikhi itself and like how the different kind of aspects of it form and work, and then what pathways there are into it. So once we're clear on that, it's a bit of an easier time than we can have when we're trying to sell a Sikhi or tell a Sikhi to people about how you can engage with it. It doesn't necessarily require an Islamic style of conversion where you recite Shahada or a Christian style of conversion or anything like that. It can initially, the start point could be you integrate Sikhi into your existing spiritual practice or your existing religious practices. So a similar way how a Christian could adopt Stoicism and kind of augments the way he practices his faith. So it helps him with overcoming struggle and hardships, that kind of thing. And so Sikhi could do a very similar role where we can come in and augment your existing faith by basically sharing with you the ultimate culmination of what spiritual progress is, right? To achieve a state of non-duality or realize non-duality and complete oneness and what that means. So when you're reciting the name of Allah, when you're reciting the name of Jesus, you're doing it conscious of what the ultimate end goal here is, rather than sort of like taking it so literally, separating it from yourself, and never achieving that which you seek. Again, this is what the point of Sikhi could be, to help invigorate this religious and spiritual progress.
Thing to do with conversion. So there is a story about. It's about. Have you heard about the 40 martyrs?
Yeah.
So these 40 soldiers of Guru Gobind Singh Ji said, "We don't want to fight this war." They were very heavily outnumbered in Aurangzeb's time. We're very heavily outnumbered, and we're going to go. Guruji said, "Right here, you are not my Sikh, I am not your Guru, and go." And they went, and then, as far as I know, they then got back to home, and the wives said, "What are you doing here so early? What happened to the war?" They said, "We just left. We left Guruji." And they said, "We're going now." The women said, "No, we can't let this happen, we're going." Then the men said, "No, okay, chill." They went back and they died for their faith. One of the last wishes of that, one of the Sikhs,
Guru Gobind Singh.
no, of the Sikh or Guru Gobind Singh. He does have a name, I can't remember the name, unfortunately.
He's one of the gurus.
No, Guru Gobind Singh Ji was there
Yeah, I know.
speaking to his Sikh.
Right.
His Sikh said, he said to his Sikh, he said, "Give me a last wish." He said, "Just tear that." And that's it. So if you're not a Sikh, because we believe in the Khalsa. Have you heard of the Khalsa?
I have heard of it. Just maybe you can refresh.
Khalsa is like
My
God's
memory.
army, you know? And you
I
can't
see,
have
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can come back to the Jali Mukti Saki, because I think it's a pretty important one, and I think it's a good one to communicate and discuss with Muslims in particular, because a lot of the mainstream, well, I'm not sure how mainstream it is, but a lot of these Dawa types, they seem to have this interpretation where apostasy is kind of forbidden within Islam, and it's a bit of an uncomfortable point for them. It can be at times as well. So like an ideal like Islamic state in a caliphate sort of type situation where it's Muslim rule, whatever, then the punishment of apostasy could be death. And obviously, this is debated amongst their scholars and circles and stuff, and especially moderate Muslims probably wouldn't accept such a thing in modern times either. But it'd be interesting to see what individuals like this person here, I think his name is Hashim, because I know his fellow Dawa types do support this view still. So it's a good way to like differentiate Sikhi from Islam in this way, where for us apostasy is permitted, like you can do it. Also, it's not ideal, but there is still a respect for each person's individual autonomy, and the Guru themselves respect this. And the Jali Mukti Sakhi is a example of this, where the Jali Mukti they told the Guru, "We want to leave the field of battle." So it wasn't even just leaving the faith; they was just leaving the actual Guru in the time of emergency, in time of battle. And the Guru still said, "Okay, fine, go." And then they left. And when they got home, their wives are like, "Oh, the battle done. Like, what's happened? Why you come back so early?" Sort of thing. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we left the Guru," sort of thing. We didn't want to sort of die there. And then the wives are like, "Well, if you guys don't want to go, then we're gonna get ready and go." So they start getting ready to go and like shame their husbands over it. And the husbands feeling shamed were like, "Okay, fine, we'll go back." And they go back and they fight the battles and stuff. And they get martyred. And as they're dying breaths, they ask the Guru, "Can we can you relieve our apostasy? Can you that letter that we wrote where we agreed to apostatize? Can you rip that letter up?" kind of thing. And the Guru accepts them back in, sort of thing. So there is this autonomy, there's this freedom in Sikhi. There isn't this kind of like, if you leave it, you're gonna die. And a lot of what I've understood as well from the Muslims is that a lot of these apostasy laws kind of thing is similar to a militaristic scenario, that a society you don't want dissenters, or you want to court martials, things like this is a common military practice. But in Sikhi, like even in a military scenario, apostasy was permitted, right? There's still that respect for an individual's choice and autonomy.
You can't have.
Isn't that one of the sects within the Sikhs, isn't it?
No,
Or is this
Khalsa
part of
is
your?
Sikhi.
It's part of your culture.
Khalsa is like the
Religion,
I'm
sorry.
not.
So yeah, I mean, I get I understand where the thing's coming from, and I also want to make it very clear, like, I don't want to berate the Singh here. Like, I super appreciate that he's took the time out, and he's even tempting as someone who claimed himself to be a novice to Sikhi still. If he's incredibly brave doing this, and as a brother, we should support and respect his attempt here. So I don't want any of this, like me sort of like doing this now, trying to be seen as critique of this thing. I have a lot of respect that the Singh actually went down and did this. So I didn't do it. Singh did do it, right? And it's only by things like this going down and doing this and forming these, like engaging in these conversations and debates and discussions with other communities that they get a bit more of an understanding, even if like it might not seem like much ground is being progressed at the time. Over time, with more presence, more progression will happen. So that aside, I just want to say on this particular point about regarding like Khalsa and the Sikhi not being anything distinct, like in some ways yes, in some ways no. I do feel Sikhi as a wider thing is distinct from the Khalsa, which is a narrower thing. So Sikhi I would see as even more broad than what a religion typically is, like Islam and Christianity exists in a whole different layer. I don't think it's quite as broad as something like Hinduism or what we call Hinduism today, which I'll probably just see more as a resource pool for mythologies that you can draw from. The Buddhists have drawn from it, the Jains have drawn from it, and then also the Sikhs have drawn from that same resource pool. But within the Hinduism tradition sort of thing or civilization, there's like many like sub traditions or religions that could be seen as religions. They got the Shaivites, you got the guys who believe in Vishnu, all that kind of types, right? So they got Sakhis that they believe in that contradict like the Sakhis of the other ones, right? Because these are like they're all just drawing from the same resource pool, but they're interpreting things and emphasizing things in different ways. And Sikhs also use that resource pool. So in Gurbani, it's full of examples from that Hindu mythos. But it's not exclusive to that Hindu mythos. It's also taking examples from the Persian sphere of influence as well, and the Abrahamic traditions as well. So we've got like Adam from Adam and Eve also mentioned in Gurbani as well. You got Azrael, like the angel of death mentioned. So Sikh is not bound to any particular resource pool. It's got its own sort of like points to make. And we'll use whatever resources and mythologies and stuff to communicate the point to the audience, to the target audience it's communicating to. And so that's kind of Sikhi as well. So it's a bit more defined than something very broad like Dharmic culture, like this Sanatan Dharma, whatever that means, the Hinduism thing. And Abrahamism, I suppose, is also kind of like this mythos pool, which you get Islam, Christianity, Judaism. So Sikhi is a kind of bit more defined than a very broad thing like that, but it's not quite as rigid and defined as something like Islam or Christianity. But what is more defined in that way, and then what could be classed as a religion, is the Khalsa. Again, it's got defined rituals and beliefs and practices, codes of conduct. And in fact, I think it's even more specific and more defined than Islam and Christianity, etc. And I personally would define Khalsa as, or give him further than religion, and actually say the Khalsa is a company or companies, ideally with a modernized missile system. And it has a kind of corporate culture, has a corporate policies and corporate uniform. It's a company in that sense, and it's kind of free to come in. Well, not free to come in, like if applied, like for a missile or whatever, however you sort of do it. Nowadays, it's a bit more, yeah, it's kind of like free. Just take Amrit, then now you're the Khalsa sort of thing, right? But before, like you would have like, for example, in Buddha, you would have had to go through like training. You would have to be like accepted, that sort of thing. Whether that's right or wrong, it's up to like each person to figure out for themselves. I've got my views on this regarding a modernized missile system, but essentially it has a corporate structure more than a kind of religious structure, which is again a bit more broad. So within Islam, you'll have many subsects and that kind of stuff, which are a bit more defined than the wider Islam label. But within Sikhi, you have the Sikhi, then you have the Khalsa, is a bit more narrowly defined. And within the Khalsa, you'll have many missiles, essentially, which is even more narrowly defined.
So I'm not baptized Sikh. It's like an Amrit. You take Amrit, and which is the nectar of the Gurus, like a ceremony.
Yeah, and another thing as well, I know I keep pausing it quite quickly because I've got a lot to say on this sort of stuff. But essentially, this idea of like we translate taking Amrit. I mean, we shouldn't really say like taking Amrit. You're receiving Amrit and you're receiving Pahol more accurately. And it's a bit like we should see that as receiving a knighthood. because the Khalsa is a kind of noble militaristic order. Because I see Khalsa kind of equated to like, oh, how Vikings and samurais were in the past. But I wouldn't say they're like Vikings, at least from my understanding of it, at least. A bit more like the samurai or the European knight, because the Khalsa is also raised to a level of nobility. It's not an exclusive nobility where you have to be born into it. Anyone can join the Khalsa, and by doing so, you're raised in status from a peasant to a king kind of status, from a Raja status. But then with that comes a kind of aesthetic of that royal kind of kingly status, a king warrior, kshatriya kind of thing, right? So the caste of the Khalsa is a kshatriya caste. And it goes against the caste system, even though I'm saying the kshatriya, because traditionally in the kind of like Brahmin supremacy caste system, one, the Brahmins were on top, and two, you couldn't really change your caste, right? But Guru Gobind Singh comes in and says, "Nah, screw that. Even the peasant can become a kshatriya, the kingly caste, if he so chooses to." And that is in direct defiance to the traditional caste system that was kind of being imposed in India at the time. So we should kind of see and we should explain this Amr Sinjar, the taking Bahol, as a knighthood process. A Sikh is becoming knighted into the Khalsa sort of thing. For me, that's a kind of better way to see it and visualize it. Whether we are kind of like equivalents of European knights and stuff today, that's obviously a different matter, and that's why we're pushing things like the Dharam Yudh pipeline and that kind of stuff and missile to try and reinvigorate the Khalsa kind of status in these things. But again, that's kind of a separate discussion now.
It's a bit like taking Shahada. It's a bit like.
Well, more like baptism.
It's like that principle.
Yeah.
You now are baptized.
Yeah, for us, the Shahada is actually just a declaration of faith.
Yeah.
It's not similar to baptism or anything like that, because it is just a formality for you to declare publicly. Now you are going to follow and obey the will of God and obey the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him.
So I suppose today, actually, even though like philosophically maybe not, it shouldn't be, but today it is like the Shahada in so many ways. Like when you receive Amrit, when you conduct the Amrit Sanjar kind of ritual, for many people it is just you're just declaring your faith. It's nothing really more than that. Like, yeah, you'll do some like extra parts and stuff now. But it's not what it used to be. Like when you joined the Khalsa, when you took Amrit or received Amrit, I should say, you would join in the army, you would join the Khalsa order, and there was a commitment to engage in Dharam Yudh. But many today don't really, like, from what I've understood, from what I've seen as well, experienced, they don't even understand the status of the Khalsa as a guru, for one, and then secondly, they don't even understand the purpose of the Khalsa either. So the way I summarize what the purpose of the Khalsa is and what I argue it is, and from my personal opinion and understanding as well, is that it's every Khalsa's duty or dharam to engage in Dharam Yudh, righteous battle, and it doesn't have to be just physically, to pursue or advance the cause of Khalsa Raj. And Khalsa Raj in turn means for me is an environment in which those seeking to pursue mukti can do so in peace, free from tyranny and oppression. But many don't seem to be either cognizant of that, or if they are, they don't really take it seriously and they don't really put steps towards it. Like, really, every day we should be asking ourselves, what did we do today to advance the cause of Khalsa Raj? Like, well, what did I do? Like, and you don't have to be like some kind of battlefield warrior and like going out finding a dush and killing them. Like, the times have changed, and so should the methods of battle as well. Like, it could be like, if you're saying working in investment banking, then how much did you make today so that you can invest more of this fund in Khalsa missiles, for instance, or promoting a particular Khalsa project or something that is related to Khalsa Raj in some way, shape, or form. There's maybe modern ways to fight. It doesn't always have to be like gung-ho soldier type things anymore. Maybe back in the day it probably should have been, because that was the mode of warfare. But nowadays things like soft power play a far larger role in influencing things and creating positive change. And so recently as well, there was a really good interview by Malakit Singh or Uncle Mal on Instagram with Subaig Singh. And they were talking about the kind of like the Khalsa today and sort of things and how it sort of like fell off, right? And they are completely right. Like, a lot of the Khalsa aren't like warriors. They don't. Most people haven't experienced violence, right? A lot of the Khalsa have just become like these vegetarian monks, like dressed up as as warriors. And that's fine. I mean, if that's what they want to do, but at the same time, it's not fine. I mean, we shouldn't really say it's fine. If something's not fine, it isn't fine, right? But what can we do? I mean, am I gonna like just like quit my job and just go find someone to shoot now? Probably not, right? Most of us probably not gonna do that. Or some evildoer to shoot, right? But there are things we should be doing in terms of actually creating those environments that I mentioned, right? Those environments where those seeking to pursue mukti can do so in peace, free from tyranny. Those that can be done in non-violent means as well. So perhaps the Khalsa today, instead of just looking at the Khalsa's like the aesthetics of the actions itself, like is the Khalsa like getting dressed up with warrior kind of paraphernalia, like is he carrying this many swords or whatever, is he like learning to shoot, all this kind of stuff, which you should do, but what is the actual outcome of these things? Like, are you actually increasing the security, defense, and justice in your society, in your environments? We should be looking at it in terms of outcomes, not necessarily just the inputs, because we don't actually know what the inputs are as a band. Like, I could argue maybe these ways would increase that thing, and some other thing might argue, oh no, we should do things in this way and follow this Maryada and this whatever, and that will achieve Khalsa Raj. But in reality is, we should both try it our ways. And many experiments should be going on, and we should see by the results which ones actually increase prosperity and freedom and liberty and justice in society, which one provides the most security for people. That's the best way to do it. And this is kind of the crux of the kind of a misalization vijars and stuff we're going to be publishing soon as well, and I've been sort of hinting at here and there, and the downhill pipeline related things as well. So the Khalsa today should really start thinking in terms of outcomes, rather than simply aesthetics. Although aesthetics are important, higher still is like the outcomes you achieve whilst in those aesthetics, if that makes sense, right?
But what I wanted to discuss mainly with you is the concept of God within Sikhism. Maybe you can just summarize it for us?
I'd love to. So our we have the Mool Mantra. Have you heard of the Mool Mantra?
No.
Yeah, and this thing's nature's quite nice, right? Like he'll ask her, like, "Are you aware of this? Are you aware of that?" Before going into it, sort of thing. But in reality, is you probably shouldn't be doing it, and the reason why is because we kind of like it's assumed these guys don't know. Why would they? But they wouldn't spend much time focusing on Sikhi. They don't take it that seriously. I mean, let's just look at the non-verbal language of Hashim here. He's not taking it that seriously. He doesn't see Sikhi as a threat of any sort to his philosophy or his ideology. Not that it is a threat to him. In some ways, it's a threat to dogmas. And if he holds a dogma, then yeah, then he should be like kind of like, oh damn, I should take this seriously and listen properly. But he's not even facing the thing. So like, it's all this kind of stuff. You just sort of like look at it and like, yeah, why would they know? Like, why would they care? Right? We haven't provided an argument compelling enough for them to care. So but if it's a Christian here, he'll be like facing dead on each other. He'll be like, yeah, I know about the Trinity. I know about this kind of concept. Some of these Muslims will know the Bible more than the Christians, and vice versa. Some of the Christians know the Quran better than like a lot of Muslims as well. So, but that kind of relationship, that kind of dynamic does not exist amongst Sikhs on his face, because they know it at some kind of surface level, just enough to kind of like parrot their lines about, oh, this is what we heard about Sikhi and our kind of madrasa or like Bible studies, whatever, or our kind of like proselytization groups. And this is the kind of lines you say if you ever approach a Sikh or a Sikh approaches you, like you take them on this, you take them on that. Outside of that, you don't really know the depth of the Sikhi stuff. And it's a shame because a lot of us Sikhs don't know the depth of it either. So we'll get ourselves into situations like this where we find it very difficult then to explain our faith because we're not practiced, we're not engaged in debate. Many Sikhs kind of detest the concept of debate. They think you shouldn't question things, you shouldn't debate things. And they sort of like form these kind of brittle sharda and these brittle echo chambers that when individuals like Hashim and these Dawa types come in, or Christian missionaries and stuff, they find it very easy to shatter those echo chambers and cast doubt. And then people do end up leaving Sikhi because of this, because they're like, oh, well, that doesn't seem like match up to what I was told. But yeah, it is what it is. And it's a call to action for us Sikhs to engage in these things and form frameworks and just genuinely and passionately pursue this cause.
First paragraph. This is Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, "Jaise main aave kasam ki bani." He said, as God is telling me, I'm speaking this to you. So just very important to understand. We feel this is very divine revelation, and he describes to God. He describes God to us. So just give me 2 minutes. And
that's fine.
Yeah. So he says, "Ik Oankar." Ik Oankar means he's describing the Big Bang. Yeah. From the ik is one, and it's written as a number one. One God, only one God. Om is this vibration. Om. So from this vibration came all of this. Ek Onkar, Gur Prasad, by the Guru's grace.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly do a sentence because it feels very out of context. By the Guru.
Yeah, because it's awkward now, right? Like it sounds awkward to someone when you're explaining like the Moorman term like in like English and then like into someone who's like not familiar with Sikh concepts and stuff like this. And you're using like things like God's grace and like what does that mean, right? What does Om God means like the Big Bang, like these kind of things are like they're kind of fine to some kind of degree, but like when you're debating someone like this, you gotta be very, very like you're very solid on what you're trying to say to them. So like instead of sort of like coming in and trying to appeal to science and say, we're sciencey kind of things, like you should appeal to kind of philosophy in this sense and say, look, we begin with a number because we're referring to a concept of oneness. And our concept of oneness is not your Islamic monotheism concept where you believe kind of Mr. God who's outside the universe sort of thing and the creation separate. We believe in actual oneness consistently where everything is one. There is no distinction between inside and outside or external or whatever. It's all that one existence itself, right? So you begin with this kind of non-dual philosophy and it kind of really sets the tone of the debate from the get-go that we're pantheists or panentheists or whatever term you want to use, or non-dualists is the term I prefer. And then that's kind of set because then you make quite a clear distinction that your understanding of God in this monotheistic way, if you so hold it, because then you'll find out depending on what his response is distinct from our understanding of one God, meaning literally oneness. And then you go to the Ong concept or the Ong God concept. And you can start breaking things down regarding like what Ong is a combination of like three sounds. It's a concept that's existed even before Sikhi. It's like this Indic term, and it refers to things like the waking state, the dreaming state, the dreamless sleep state. All three modes of reality that you can have. Like there's nothing outside of these three modes, kind of thing. So you cover all existence, and that Ong, that Ik exists in all of these three states. That God is referring to that Turya, that thread that exists within these three beads. Just to reaffirm that there is not separation here. There's not two things. It might appear to be separate in concepts, but it's ultimately fundamentally that one thing that permeates within all of these apparent separated things. Now, that's just Ikwangar, a very simple, quick explanation of Ikwangar, right? You don't have to then go on to the rest of it because that bit itself gives grounds for debate, because at that point there, the Muslim gentleman here is going to start debating you on that kind of concept. He's going to say stuff like, if you believe God's everywhere, he's in the toilet kind of thing, right? He'll start saying stuff like that. And then you've got to be prepared to say things like, if I'm saying everything is God, then yes, those atoms, that the specific arrangement of energy into atoms to make up something that we as human beings utilize and purpose as a toilet, yeah. But it's not just in the toilet, it's not just in the bathroom. It's like saying, is a living room in the house. Like, yeah, of course it is, right? But it's you separating those concepts out and sort of saying, and you're choosing a very particularly like emotive one to try and illustrate your kind of point. But it doesn't deny the actual reality of the situation here and what we're trying to say. But yeah, this is where the debate gets into. And I obviously I'm biased, obviously, because as a Sikh, I believe the philosophy is superior, or more robust at least. They might have their philosophy might have value for him. Complete respect that. But yeah, I mean, I think you'd end up winning a debate, or they'd find it very hard to debate you on this pantheism point, because their concept of God requires a degree of faith. It's also unfalsifiable in many ways, whereas ours is kind of self-evident. So if you peg the definition of God to existence itself, that's undeniable. Even if you attempt to deny it, you prove it because you have to exist to deny that. So our concept of God is extremely fundamental. Even their concept of God has to rely on existence, right? Because there has to, if you have to say God exists, you still need that quality of existence or having an existence to exist, even before the God exists or their God exists. So therefore, for us, the actual quality of the existence of itself is the most fundamental base characteristic, and that is what permeates. That is what is. Like sab gobind hai, sab gobind hai, gobind bind nahi koi. If everything is God, everything is God. Without God, there is nothing, right? There's non-existenceness. So that's exactly what we're trying to say here.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. There are certain, I don't know if they are sects within Sikhism, or maybe the Sikh theology, that they believe that we, eventually will merge with God.
That's all Sikh. That's all.
Do you believe that as well?
Yeah.
So this is like basically you believe in reincarnation.
But it's a bit more than that. We can merge with God here on this.
How?
So
Well, what is firstly before you tell me the how? Tell me what does this merging with God actually mean? Or how do you see it in your theology?
So I had a very amazing experience a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it's basically it's anand. Anand means anand is bliss. Now I'm not talking me and you having a chat here.
Yeah.
And it's a very lovely chat. It's a very nice. We're happy. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Fine. But there's something beyond that, and that is a bliss, real bliss. And we can feel that. So you've heard of the seventh chakra, the third eye. We believe in the Dasan Dwar, and we believe these things. On top of your head, you can open it. You can, and a Muslim can open it. A Sikh can open it. Everybody, it's not exclusive to Sikhs. This is just something that can happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so the point the thing's sort of making here regarding like Sikhi's aim is like you merge back with God sort of thing, or you merge with God. It's a good point to make because it provides like an experiential framework that the reason why we believe what we do is that because we can experience it here and now. So unlike the Muslim, they have to basically die and then they find out the truth of their claims. For us, it's like if you engage in meditative practice, particularly through like things like Raga Kirtan, then you'll get to a state of anand, of supreme bliss. But be wary how you word this because if you start making the anand itself the object of desire here with spiritual practice, you're kind of missing the point because you can get anand for a variety of means, and like, I mean like real anand as well, like the one thing's describing where you're more than just happy. People who take drugs and psychedelics like DMT and like mushrooms, ayahuasca, this kind of stuff, you do reach the states of anand. If you hyperventilate and you deprive oxygen to the brain, to someone called Wim Hof, he does this Wim Hof technique, and a very similar thing happens. You will reach states of euphoria, and you'll get to anand type states. And you wouldn't be able to distinguish something I've experienced myself. Like I've listened to like Kirtan of certain types, got to anand, and then also then tried things like the Wim Hof technique or whatever. You'll get similar states of euphoria. But the anand itself is like, it's not the object of the thing that you're seeking, it's the kind of byproduct of the realization that you attain. And the real point here is that you're not a seeking merger, you already are merged. And the point you're trying to do is unveil that illusion to think that you're not merged. And that delusion to think that you aren't already merged is exactly what we call the humme, right? This kind of sense of separateness, this I me-ness. And that's the kind of like goal of the spiritual side of Sikhi to unveiling and to remind you of, to do Simran regularly as well, so you can constantly tap back into that state to realize, oh no, there isn't actually this sense of separation. I'm not stuck in traffic, I am the traffic. That kind of thinking, right? And it's something anyone can experience if you sort of like discipline yourself and engage in the practice. Now personally, I think Raga Kirtan is probably the best way to do this. Because it's completely immersive, as the Guru designed these things in a very conscious way, and you're fully there. Like you're not actually getting out your mind in that sort of sense. You're really kind of like doing an internal inquiry, with the Shabda sort of like guiding you to the truth, and it's something you can experience. And this is something very unique about Sikhi itself when contrasting it with Abrahamic traditions. Because the truth claim itself that we're making is directly evidential. You can get there through logic as well. You can deduce it logically, that everything is oneness. But the best way to do it is really like doing Raga Kirtan, right? Or like listen to Raga Kirtan or singing the Shabad and like pour your heart and soul into it, truly loving what you're doing with it as well. Not just like blindly doing it, but actually really getting immersed into it. Then you do see it. Like if you follow the recipe, you get the cake sort of thing, right? And that's what happens. Whereas with the Abrahamics, or at least the mainstream interpretations of them, you follow the recipe, you only find out if you get the cake or not after you're dead, right? So it's a bit of a bad deal in comparison. So, but these are the points we need to be making when we debate with Abrahamics, but we don't seem to articulate in that way.
And you can connect with this one. Then, if we connect to this one and become one with,
But that's what I'm trying to understand. How do you perceive this connection with the one? Because when you say merge, there's a difference between connecting with someone, okay? So I can connect with you on a human level, nothing wrong with that. But when I say I merge into something, that is again a whole new understanding. You see what I mean?
It's a really, really good question. The Muslims brought up here, like, is there a difference between like the connection and the merging? And he's 100% right. There is a difference, because like simply connecting, like you're already assuming there's two parts that exist and they've come together. But a merger is like, okay, yeah, like two parts have come and they've become one thing. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point he makes here. It's a bit semantic, of course, but I think it's an important one he mentions, and it kind of goes to the root of this as well, because in Sikhi, there seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding as well regarding what exactly we're doing as well. But we are trying to get to this state of complete oneness, or at least realize that we're already one, not necessarily realizing that, okay, sometimes I can get like to a state where I forget about myself as separate, but oh, that self does exist. No, I don't think that is the case. I think we use the concept of a self as a kind of heuristic, so we can sort of operate in our day-to-day, everyday transactional lives, right? But when you do something and you retreat back into that same understanding that, yeah, it's ultimately illusory, there is no separate sense of self, there was never two parts to begin with, it was all one thing. But it's that illusion itself is what we're trying to convey, that is that thing is the misunderstanding that we as Sikhs are engaging in spiritual pursuit to overcome. So it's an interesting point he makes here. I'm not sure if he understood what point he was making.
The gurus, what I'm gonna try, I will fail. My gurus tell me I'll fail. To describe this to you is have you heard of Gungi Matiai? Gungi?
Just stick to English, bro.
No. So I don't know I don't know where you're from.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, my understanding of these Hindi words is very limited compared to yours.
Yeah, no, that's
yes.
I can't.
So maybe stick to English.
Yeah, of course.
So we don't get confused.
Yeah, and this is another thing as well, like again on the side point, but I think it's important we articulate Sikhi in the relevant languages as well. Obviously, the Gurus themselves were doing this by communicating Sikhi in a variety of languages. So when we do like stuff like this, when we're engaging with like non-Sikhs, we really need to make an extra effort to convey our point in the language they understand. We need to go to their level to bring them up. That's again, the Guru themselves have taught us this is the strategy to use. That is the strategy we should use. I mean, the Muslims and the Christians are aware of this, and that's what they do. So the Christians are very notorious for this, where they go to different regions and stuff, and they really amalgamate into the culture, and they kind of take what exists and then put it through a kind of Christian lens. So it's the actual onboarding ramp into Christianity it's not steep, it's quite shallow. And the barrier to entry is quite low. Again, it's a very clever thing, and we as Sikhs, we need to master this art rather than enacting massive barriers to entry and again wondering why there are no Sikhs, kind of thing, why people are not understanding us.
It's sweet of the mute, like a sweet, you know, like a sweet. I'll give you something sweet, but I'm mute. I can't give it to you. I'm trying to give you something, so it's a bit like me saying.
So do you understand it yourself?
It's a feeling, isn't it? So like for example.
Because you see, if a person understands something, then it is easy to articulate.
It's a very compelling point he makes, that if you really understand something, you should be able to explain it and articulate it, arguably quite simply as well. The thing is, when it comes to something like God, especially like a conception of God, it does become quite difficult, because you're talking about the concept and quality of existence itself. So what the thing is sort of saying, like, you can't kind of comprehend it, you can't kind of talk about it as well. I can get where he's coming from. You can sort of like describe it in like a very like kind of broad abstract way, like we can know what we're talking of. So consciousness studies are a very similar thing. We don't really know what consciousness is. Like you'll hear that statement quite a lot. We don't know what consciousness is, but we do know when we're talking, when using the word consciousness and we're studying consciousness studies, that kind of thing, we do know like roughly what phenomena we're talking about. We just don't know what the nature of that phenomena is. That's where we have the hard and soft problems of consciousness, that sort of thing, right? Very similar thing to God as well. Like we know what we're referring to when we refer to God, like when we're referring to existence. But because existence is so vast, it's so grand, it's so old, it's going to be here for a very long time, sort of thing. Like the concepts of infinity, you can't grasp that. Like our brains aren't capable of that, right? We're not biologically geared or designed to grasp these concepts in its entirety, right? And that's kind of when like Barney and like and Six and sort of like say it's difficult to describe. That's what we're referring to. Like we're very difficult to grasp the entirety of this concept. But we do have an understanding as Six or as Barney, etc., or spiritual seekers. We do have an understanding what phenomena we're talking about. It's just that we can't articulate the entirety of it. That's what it means when we're saying it's hard to describe. Not necessarily that we have no clue what we're talking about airy fairy things. We do know, but we're just like we don't know at the same time. But we got to be quite careful about what exactly we're saying we don't know to versus what we do know.
You know, like the difference between other religions and Islam. One thing I've noticed, and as you probably know, I'm interested in different religions and their understanding. So I try to go to the scriptures rather than, because people can have hundreds of opinions. So I rather go to what the scriptures say or what their religious leaders say, like Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, and so on.
Yeah, this is a really good point he's made as well. I forgot to mention at the start as well, like, but I mentioned this quite regularly with all kind of things I put out, is that I only ever speak from my own perspective. Like, I don't speak on behalf of all six, just like this thing isn't speaking on behalf of all six. And you actually made this quite clear in the Christian video. I've been watching bits of it. And the same with the Muslim here. He's only going to speak from his own understanding and perspectives. He doesn't really speak for all of Islam either. And this is like, again, early in this video as well, I keep saying mainstream interpretations, that kind of interpretation, rather than kind of like label all of Islam. Because there is a diversity of approaches and opinions and understandings in these things. And he is right, like you should go to the scripture directly. But the thing is, even if you go to the scripture directly, you're likely relying on a translation. And a translation is an interpretation. And even if you go for the raw and you learn the languages and stuff, even then you're going to have a very personal interpretation. These things are like this, right? Like it's a very personal experience interacting with the guru kind of thing. And a very bespoke experience. In by Mani Singh Shridan de Pragatamalla, something I write about in the introduction to the Azadis manifesto. It talks about the various perspectives or levels of competency a Sikh has, and in that Sakhi, Guru Arjan Dev Ji is basically explaining that just like a doctor doesn't prescribe the same medicine to everybody, he looks at each patient's ailment case by case and prescribes the relevant medicine. That is what the Guru is doing. So there isn't kind of like this universal canon understanding, canon interpretation when it comes to at least Gurbani. So you're not going to get that. What you are going to get, the best we're going to get, and it's not really a bad thing either, to be honest, is that when you're interacting with a Singh, understand that, or a Sikh, or even a Muslim, or whoever you're interacting with, it should be kind of clear from the get-go that I'm debating your perspective, your interpretation, and you're going to get my perspective and my interpretation. I'm not going to speak on behalf of all Sikhs, and you're not going to speak on behalf of all Muslims. And that should be like an inherent kind of assumption going into these things from both sides. And once you do that, then it is more fruitful because you are then dealing with the individuals. You're trying to change each other's minds or share ideas or learn from each other. That's the way it should be done, rather than trying to debunk the entire religion, because you'll never grasp it like that sort of sense, because there is no kind of canon. In Islam, there's no canon now either. There might have been in the beginning, I don't know, right? But they've got their various sects and interpretation, the schools of thought. Same with us, same with any philosophy, so any tradition that kind of materializes over time. Same with even in the individuals, the idea you might have like a year ago, you might think you hold the same ideas now, but really it has evolved in some ways, maybe more subtle ways. And you'll only realize that over like decades when you start looking back, oh, I used to think like that way. So even within one's own life, their mind changes in so many ways. How do you think it's going to change amongst many, many people over hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, right?
So for one main difference I've noticed is the clarity and understanding within Islam is pretty clear. Like even a child can understand. So I don't need to go and jump through these different hoops to make a grown-up understand, let alone a child.
It's very simple.
Yes.
Yeah, the child can understand as well. The kind of like what I'm getting at with Sikhi too. Like I've told children this, and they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. I get that, right?" It's just it comes down to the individuals articulating it and how best they do it. But he is right. Like the Islam, well, at least this guy's interpretations of him, like the Dawa types and stuff. What you generally see It's because they've practiced and articulated it so many times. They've figured out the narratives and the lines to say that they're. I mean, I've done a very similar thing with Azadism. You might have heard something at the start of this video when I talk about the Khalsa, right? I've got these like one-liners now. I've kind of like memorized and said, I've said them so many times, so it's kind of like easily roll off my tongue, and I know what I'm talking about with it because I've said it and repeated it. I've drilled it so many times. A similar thing with these proselytizers in Islam and Christianity. They do the same thing. They practice these things. They debate amongst each other, so it becomes quite easy for them. And then when they approach somebody who's not used to those kind of things, then in comparison, they do seem quite all over the place, and so they then seem a bit more clear in comparison. So it's quite important then as sects going into these things that we are well practiced and we are familiar with the environments we're going into if we're in a debate. And we're also quite confident in ourselves regarding our own Sikhi and our belief systems or whatever it is, our truth claims. And we've drilled them, not in a dogmatic way. Like, this is why we, in our own kind of like safe spaces, our own circles and stuff, we should be constantly debating one another because we're going to be doing it in good faith, right? So if I've got cracks in my ideas, I've got like holes in my narrative, or if I'm explaining something in a deficient way, it'll be you, the Sangha, that would communicate with that to me, and I will understand. Okay, well, me explaining it in this way probably isn't the best way of doing it. I need to adjust it. And this happened recently when I did that video on pantheism, libertarianism, and Sikhi. Many people misunderstood what I was saying regarding pantheism, and they kept arguing, "Oh no, no, Sikhi is panentheist, right?" Because obviously I didn't really clarify well enough that pan means all. So it depends on your definition of what universe is. If you're using universe colloquially by saying, "Oh, universe means all," then yeah, pantheism is the word you'd use, right? But if you're using the word universe in a kind of technical way and you assume there's an outside of the universe that exists, then yeah, you'd be a panentheist kind of thing, right? So obviously, it's me obviously being a bit rusty on these things, communicating this poorly, and the feedback I've gotten is that, oh no, with this, without kind of like debating it. I'll be able to refine it now, like speaking to people in the comments or like DMs or whatever, or one-to-one, that sort of way, or in conversations I've had. And it's just helped with that feedback mechanism of me refining the way I approach this topic and communicate the topic. And we should be doing this quite regularly, rather than what I also hear quite a lot of is people disagree in private and they don't want to like bring disagreements to the forefront and engage with the person they disagree with. That's a very bad habit we have as a community, and it's detrimental to all of us, because if you can't give people the feedback in respectful and professional ways, then they ain't going to grow, they ain't going to learn, they ain't going to refine their approaches to things, and you'll consistently perpetuate bad forms of communicating. And this has wider ramifications when it comes to actually achieving success in political ambitions and that kind of things as well. So it's not a light point I'm trying to say. It's a very it's very important thing. This thing I'm saying right now is, and yeah, some of this now is kind of the evidence of what happens when we don't have that culture in place.
A grown-up understand, let alone a child.
It's very simple.
Yes.
It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
Sikhi is very simple.
Yeah. So explain to me this merging with God.
Okay, so another thing as well is, right, a lot of these guys will purposely not understand. I've seen this in Speaker's Corner debates before as well, like a couple of years ago when I used to watch these like all the time. They won't understand. I mean, these guys aren't uneducated people. Some of these are very uneducated, right? They know debate tactics, all this kind of stuff, right? But they'll feign ignorance because they don't want to grant you the point. So sometimes it's like, if you do believe that you've sufficiently communicated your idea in an articulate way that is clear for the layperson to understand, then you have done your job. You got to remember as well, like, when you enter these kind of conversations, especially at Speaker's Corner where there's a camera on you, all this kind of stuff, right? Your target audience here isn't the person you're talking to necessarily all the time, right? A lot of these guys aren't going to change their mind. Like, you should know that from the get-go, right? So by some miracle they might, right? Like, or you might change surface level things about their mind, or that kind of thing, but they won't fundamentally change their position, kind of thing. What you need to understand is that the individual you're talking to in a setting like this is a prop. And your real target audience is the audience watching. So people like me now watching him, right? So I'm observing these arguments and I'm considering it in my own conclusions. I'm sort of like watching these debates. I'm taking this from there, taking that from there, understanding from that perspective. Oh, I didn't really see it that way. All that kind of stuff's going in the mind of hundreds of people, right? Or how many people, or 28,000 in this case. And that's your audience. That's who you're talking to. The person in front of you is merely the prop. That sounds kind of weird to say that, but it is true. They treat you the same way. You are a prop for them. Look, this guy's thumbnail and his title of his video speaks volumes, right? Sikh faith is shaken by Muslims' arguments, right? He's used this guy as a prop. He didn't use his name. And use his own name, Hashim, but didn't use this guy's name. So yeah, this is some of the kind of like underlying like politics of this you got to be aware of if you're going to engage in situations like this. So yeah, I'll stop it there for today. I mean, we're about 8-9 minutes in, and I've been like talking and like interrupting these guys for like an hour now. So like, we'll probably end it there for now. If you guys are interested, I might go through the rest of it. I mean, they're only getting started, so I probably should go through more of it and actually get to like the meat of this debate. So we'll see. Let me know. Is there any in particular like portions of this if you've watched it already? Just send me the timestamps and I'll sort of like jump around to those parts. But for now, that's kind of like all I wanted to say in the first sort of like 9 minutes of this. And if there's interest in these kind of videos, I might do the when he speaks to Bob, the Christian. That was also an interesting conversation from the bits I heard of it. And Bob's actually a pretty interesting character. His way of arguing is very, very good. I'm not really familiar with this Hashim guy much, but I'm a bit more familiar with the Bob, the Christian. He does have quite good debate skills, and his rhetoric's on point. I still disagree with him, of course, but I think he's quite an enjoyable individual to watch debating and stuff like that. But yeah, again, I'll leave it there. Any comments, any thoughts, and that kind of stuff, let me know. If you do want us to go down to Speaker's Corner, let us know. Maybe we'll make time and go down as well. I mean, I've always been tempted. I've just always held off because there's always gonna be good faith. And also some of the stuff I saw about it a couple of years ago is like, yeah, this place has become a bit of a mess, right? But recently it looks like it's calmed down quite a bit, and if we don't engage in this kind of stuff, then we can't cry about like, oh, this thing's gone and he's got like schooled by this person, whatever. If we're not going down, then yeah, that's what's gonna happen, right? So yeah, let us know these things. Why? Because